A vision reshaped. Singapore's enduring enigma. As an editor with decades of experience scrutinizing narratives, I've learned that the most compelling stories aren't merely about success. They are about defiance. They are about breaking norms, challenging assumptions, and unveiling a truth so potent it reconfigures our understanding of the world. The manuscript before me, a transcript of a lecture given by Professor Edouard Valois at the esteemed Sorbonne International Institute of Political Studies, promised just that. My task: to transform this academic record into a vibrant, captivating tale that resonates with every reader, shifting its core from Japan to the astonishing metropolis of Singapore, and its contrasting perspective from the United States to the intellectual heart of France. The original story's essence, an impossible nation rising to global prominence, must not only be preserved but amplified, its cultural tapestry meticulously rewoven to reflect its new settings. Imagine, if you will, playing a simulation game as a divine creator, tasked with building a nation. You start with zero resources, a minuscule territory, surrounded by formidable, sometimes hostile powers, and a dwindling population. Any rational player would discard this scenario as an immediate failure, a blueprint for certain demise. Common sense dictates this is the only logical outcome. Yet, in our real world, there exists a nation that thrives under these exact, seemingly catastrophic conditions, not merely surviving, but dominating as a global powerhouse, a veritable anomaly. Scholars worldwide scratch their heads. Military experts, bewildered, whisper, are they extraterrestrial? It is humanity's greatest living mystery, the quiet giant named Singapore. This is no mere success story. It is a chronicle of humanity's most improbable and breathtaking turnaround, a record that demands we shed all preconceived notions. Why? Because the world watched in awe as Singapore, the unexpected titan, soared in the global power rankings. This ascent cannot be explained by economics alone. At a recent international political studies lecture at the Sorbonne, Professor Edouard Valois' opening statement silenced 400 students. Zero resources, confined land, and a declining population. Moreover, an island nation surrounded by powerful, potentially adversarial, estates. Historically, its very existence should have been a struggle. Yet, he continued, in just over 6 decades since its founding, this nation has eclipsed many European competitors, rising to become the world's 4th most influential power. And Quelland, 8, a student, Jean-Luc Dubois, scoffed, suggesting, perhaps it was just significant external aid from influential partners? Professor Valois merely offered a gentle smile and a single piercing question in return. Then why haven't others achieved the same? From a nascent economy to a per capita income soaring into the tens of thousands, Singapore's meteoric growth has been nothing short of phenomenal. Every statistic, every theory crumbled before its reality. The international community now explosively asks. The numbers prove it, history records it. Yet are we still to call it mere coincidence? We are about to delve into this astonishing phenomenon. The compelling narrative from the heart of France, now infused with the vibrant spirit of Singapore, begins immediately. Please tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We'd love to hear your stories too. But first, if you could spare a second to hit that like button, it would be a huge support for our creative efforts. Now, let's get straight to the heart of the matter. A land scarce for space, not a single drop of oil, surrounded by military giants. Logically, such a nation should barely survive, struggling for breath. Textbooks on international political studies, particularly those at the Sorbonne, would often describe the fate of buffer states, nations crushed between great powers, vanishing like dust. And yet, this particular nation stands as the world's 4th most powerful. Geopolitically, its position is utterly disadvantageous. Despite having no natural resources, in just over 60 years, it has surpassed major European rivals. Did you know this? Bonjour, my name is Léonie Dubois. I witnessed that moment firsthand in the Sorbonne lecture hall. That instant, on a Thursday afternoon in the first week of December, 2025, at 2 p.m., when 400 mouths hung agape. The grand amphitheater on the main campus of the Sorbonne was already packed with students. Nearly all 400 tiered seats were filled, with a few students leaning against the back walls, seeking any available space. It wasn't just students from international studies, but also economics, sociology, and even engineering, all drawn by a campus-wide rumor that had spread a week prior. Professor Edouard Valois was giving a special lecture. Normally, his elective courses barely attracted 100 students. But today was different. A large screen at the front of the classroom displayed only a blank black canvas, and on the podium, just a laptop and a glass of water sat. Students murmured, settling into their seats, some pulling out smartphones to check messages. "Why are you here, Leonie? Isn't this a sociology lecture?" My friend beside me whispered. As an international studies major, it wasn't a required course, nor did it count for credits, but my curiosity was insatiable. Professor Valois was known at the Sorbonne for being one of the most demanding and enigmatic figures. A doyen of national development theories, he had researched the subject for over 30 years. Such a man, suddenly delivering a special lecture, was an event not to be missed. At precisely 2 p.m., the classroom door opened, and Professor Edouard Valois entered. Appearing to be in his mid-60s, the professor wore a charcoal gray jacket over a black turtleneck, carrying an old leather satchel. The buzzing classroom instantly fell silent, and 400 gazes converged on him. He stood before the podium, slowly surveying the room, then silently opened his laptop. After a moment of profound silence, a map appeared on the large screen. A map of Southeast Asia. The professor took out a laser pointer and indicated a specific spot. "Ladies and gentlemen, observe this region." The pointer highlighted a small island nation, surrounded by massive countries. To its north lay Malaysia, a larger neighbor with significant natural resources. To its south, Indonesia, a vast archipelago nation with a huge population. And the broader region included economic and military powerhouses like China and India. The professor's voice was calm, yet it resonated clearly to every corner of the room. The land area of this island nation is approximately 730 square kilometers. That's a mere fraction of Malaysia, and almost minuscule compared to Indonesia. Its population growth has slowed, with an aging demographic and low birth rates. The professor clicked to the next slide, revealing a resource status chart. Oil reserves, 0. Natural gas, virtually 0. Iron ore, reliant on imports. Coal, none. Students leaned forward, intently watching the screen, a few nodding slowly. The professor continued, "Geopolitically, this nation is in an inherently precarious position, surrounded by larger states, devoid of natural resources, with limited land, and facing constant environmental challenges like water scarcity and rising sea levels. In international political studies, such a country is typically categorized as having high geopolitical risk." The classroom grew even quieter, students beginning to take notes. Historically, nations in such circumstances face two destinies, either becoming a satellite state of a larger power or simply vanishing from the map altogether. The professor paused, taking a sip of water. The room was so silent that even breathing was audible. All 400 eyes were fixed on the screen. My heart began to pound. I had no idea what the professor was about to discuss, but I sensed a pivotal moment approaching. The professor spoke again. "Theoretically, this nation should not exist today, or, if it did, it should be merely clinging to survival, perpetually under the influence of its powerful neighbors. Indeed, in the mid-20th century, this country was a turbulent port city, grappling with ethnic strife and economic uncertainty. Its future was grim. Many predicted it would fail shortly after its unexpected independence. And yet, the professor's tone subtly shifted, and students collectively looked up. "Do you know where this nation stands today?" The professor put down the laser pointer and switched to a new slide. A large title appeared on the screen: Global Power Ranking 2025, Comprehensive National Strength Index. France, Germany, United Kingdom. The professor paused slightly, and the entire classroom held its breath. Singapore. An instant commotion erupted. "Singapore?" my neighbor whispered. A student in the front row widened their eyes, double-checking the screen. My heart sank with a thud. Singapore, the world's fourth? What about China? The United States? The professor clicked to the next slide. 5. United States. 6. China. 7. Japan. The murmuring intensified, and several students exchanged bewildered glances. The United States is 5th? China is 6th? Japan is 7th? Is this real? The professor raised a hand, signaling for silence, and the classroom quieted once more. Your astonishment is entirely understandable. Prestigious institutions like the International Strategic Research Institute, the Global Firepower Index, and US and World Report, all these authoritative bodies have published the same results. Singapore, combining economic strength, technological prowess, diplomatic influence, and cultural resonance, has secured the fourth position in overall national power. The professor changed the screen again, revealing a graph. It depicted changes over the past 6 decades, and Singapore's line began near the bottom, then ascended sharply. 1965, a vulnerable fledgling nation. 2025, a world-class economic powerhouse. From post-independence struggles to a beacon of innovation and quality of life. From a nation with everything to lose, to a leader in global technology and governance. My mind reeled. Such a transformation in 60 years? It defied the economic development theories I had studied. Typically, a nation takes at least 100 to 150 years to join the ranks of developed countries. But Singapore had achieved it at an astonishing pace. The professor slowly scanned the classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, I have researched national development theories for 30 years. I have analyzed hundreds of nations and scrutinized countless data points. I reached one conclusion: national growth invariably requires certain conditions. Abundant resources, vast territory, a large population, a favorable geopolitical position. I learned, and I taught, that a nation must possess at least one of these. And yet, the professor projected a map of Singapore back onto the screen. This nation possesses none of these conditions. It has no resources. Its land is tiny. Its population growth has slowed. Its geopolitical risks are high. It faces existential environmental challenges. And yet, it ranks 4th globally. How is this possible? The classroom fell silent again. 400 students stared, spellbound, at the professor. He spoke slowly. This is precisely what I wish to share with you today. Singapore is a nation that has shattered all existing theories. Or, more precisely, it has forged a new theory. It is the sole example in human history where inherent weaknesses were transformed into overwhelming strengths. The professor paused, looking around the room. From July to August of this year, I traveled to Singapore. My purpose was to gather material for my research on the Southeast Asian development model. For 6 weeks, I visited the city-state, witnessing its reality firsthand. And upon my return, I realized something profound. All the theories I had researched for 30 years were fundamentally flawed. My heart began to race. The professor's voice was filled with conviction, his gaze more intense than usual. The students around me were all leaning forward. Not a single person was distracted. The professor showed the final slide. Only one sentence was written: Singapore, the theory breaker. I will now tell you its story. As the professor began to speak, the entire classroom was enveloped in complete silence. He stepped slowly from behind the podium, beginning his narrative. This past July, I boarded a direct flight from Paris to Singapore Changi Airport. The flight was approximately 3 hours. Aboard, I opened my laptop and reviewed the draft of a paper on the Southeast Asian Economic Development Model. It was a file dense with nearly 3 decades of accumulated data and theories. Singapore was just one case study among many. Frankly, I didn't harbor great expectations. I believed I already knew everything from the statistics, and the field visit was merely a procedural step to lend credibility to my paper. The plane landed at Changi Airport in the early morning. Announcements played in English, Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil, and cabin crew distributed arrival cards. Looking out the window, the airport was remarkably clean and orderly. The structure, a blend of glass and steel, gleamed in the morning sun, and the runways stretched endlessly. The pathway from the plane to immigration was immaculate, the floor shining like a mirror. The ceilings were high, natural light streaming in, making the entire area bright. Upon reaching immigration, several hundred passengers were queuing, yet there was no sense of congestion. Dozens of automated gates were available, and Singaporean citizens moved swiftly through them. There were also many counters for foreign visitors, where officers processed passports with incredible speed and courtesy. The queue shortened rapidly, and soon it was my turn. The officer took my passport, scanned it, and checked the screen. "Collecting research materials?" she asked. When I confirmed, she smiled warmly, wished me a pleasant stay, and returned my passport. The entire process, including fingerprint registration, took less than 10 minutes. As I walked to retrieve my luggage, I looked around. Signboards were displayed in multiple languages, and arrows were clear and precise. There was no chance of getting lost. Arriving at the baggage claim, the conveyor belts were already moving, and bags were appearing. My suitcase was among the first. In Paris, waiting over 30 minutes for luggage was routine. Here, it was different. Passing through customs and stepping into the arrival hall, I checked my watch again. It had taken barely 30 minutes from disembarking to fully exiting the airport. In France, an hour and a half to 2 hours is standard. The professor paused, taking another sip of water. The classroom remained silent, students diligently taking notes or gazing intently at him. In the airport lobby, I connected to the free Wi-Fi. It connected in seconds without any complex procedures, and I tested its speed. The speed was astounding. Wi-Fi at airports in Paris often fails to connect, or is painfully slow. Here it was faster than my home internet. I followed the signs to the MRT station, heading towards the city. The train schedule was displayed on electronic boards, showing the next train arriving soon. Precisely on schedule, the train pulled in, not a second late. The doors opened, and passengers disembarked in an orderly fashion. No one pushed or shoved. I boarded and found a seat. The seats were spotless, and the carriage was quiet. As the train departed, the cityscape outside the window began to glide by. The city center was not far. I pulled out my laptop, intending to work, but my eyes were captivated by the scenery outside the window. High-rise buildings stood in perfect alignment. Roads were wide and immaculately clean. Construction sites were visible, cranes moving, structures rising. Everything was in motion. Nothing seemed static. I arrived at the station and transferred to the subway. Following the transfer signs, I reached the platform for the downtown line. Trains arrived every few minutes, and the carriages were modern. Platform screen doors ensured safety, and the air conditioning inside was comfortably cool. Passengers seated quietly, looking at their smartphones or reading books. It was silent. No one was speaking loudly on the phone, nor was anyone playing loud music. I disembarked at Telokaya station, heading towards my hotel. The streets were bustling with people, but there was no chaos. Pedestrian walkways were well maintained, and traffic lights operated precisely. When crossing the road, cars stopped completely, giving priority to pedestrians. In France, cars often rush past even if pedestrians are present. Here, it was different. After checking into my hotel and entering my room, I looked at my watch. Less than 2 hours from arriving at the airport, I had reached a hotel right in the heart of the central business district. I unpacked and looked down from my window. The streets of the CBD stretched below, people walking. Shops were open, and signboards lined the streets. While in multiple languages, predominantly English, Mandarin, and Malay, there was an aesthetic and order to their display. I opened my laptop and began to type notes. First impression: the system is flawlessly operational. From the airport to the hotel, not once did I encounter a delay or get lost. Everything is connected. Everything operates precisely. This is no accident. It is a meticulously designed system. As I typed, a strange feeling washed over me. Something was profoundly different from what I had expected. The professor slowly surveyed the classroom as he continued. That night, I walked along Orchard Road. Even late at night, the streets were brightly lit and teeming with people. Women walked alone, completely at ease, without any apparent apprehension. I entered a convenience store to buy water. It was open 24 hours, and the attendant was exceptionally polite. A cheerful "Selamat datang," welcome, greeted me. The cashier system was efficient, sometimes with automated payment kiosks. Leaving the convenience store, I continued walking, turning into a side alley. Even the alleys were well lit and clean. I found hardly any litter. From the next day, I began my serious data collection. I visited the National Library, searching for materials related to economic development and reviewing statistical data. The numbers were familiar. Economic growth rates, export figures, per capita GDP, all figures I intended to cite in my paper. However, what I felt while walking through the city was entirely different from the statistics. A few days later, while walking through the city, I stopped at a bus shelter. It was summer, and the weather was scorching. The bus stop was equipped with fine misting sprays that cooled the air for waiting passengers. Sitting on the bench, I noticed free Wi-Fi signs, and electronic displays showed real-time bus arrival times. I cautiously asked a Singaporean professional standing nearby, "Excuse me, is this bus stop only cool like this in summer?" The gentleman smiled and informed me that in winter, the benches were heated. "They have heaters," he explained. I was speechless. In Paris, we often wait for buses shivering in the cold, at bus stops that sometimes don't even have a proper roof to shield us from the rain and wind. The professor operated the screen, and a photograph of the bus stop appeared. It was clean and functionally designed. The students in the classroom leaned forward, eyes fixed on the screen, a few exchanging astonished glances. "This is a perfectly ordinary bus stop in Singapore," the professor stated. "It's not a special location. You see similar sights throughout the city." A hand went up from the back of the classroom. It was Jean-Luc, a brilliant exchange student who had graduated from a prestigious French university before coming to the Sorbonne for his postgraduate studies. He was known for his sharp questions during debates. "Professor, if I may, I have a question." The professor nodded. "Of course, Jean-Luc." Jean-Luc stood up, opening his laptop. "You're speaking about Singapore's development, but I have prepared some material. Many of Singapore's key technologies and industries, it's argued, were initially imitations of Western and Japanese technologies. During its post-independence reconstruction, they deconstructed and copied foreign products. Without that, Singapore today would have been impossible." According to this analysis, his voice was calm but confident. The classroom fell silent, students' gazes shifting between the professor and Jean-Luc. My heart began to pound. Jean-Luc continued, "So, isn't their success ultimately a result of free riding on other nations' inventions?" The professor was silent for a moment. The entire classroom held its breath. Then, the professor slowly began to speak. "That is an excellent question, Jean-Luc. It is true that post-independence Singapore learned from and adapted technologies from developed nations. However, the crucial point lies in what happened next. Many countries tried to import technology from abroad. So why did only Singapore achieve such phenomenal growth and even surpass the originals?" Jean-Luc was about to interject again, but the professor raised a hand, signaling him to wait. "Let me tell you an even more crucial fact." The professor clicked to a new slide, and historical documents appeared on the screen. 1965. When Singapore unexpectedly gained independence, it was a volatile, impoverished port city. Its major industries were struggling, and its social fabric was riddled with ethnic and religious tensions. There were no natural resources, no hinterland, and an uncertain future. It was a start from the most precarious situation imaginable in human history. The classroom grew even more silent. I could see the color drain from Jean-Luc's face. The professor continued. "They had no resources, no established industries, and even basic necessities were scarce. Yet, Singapore rose. From the late 1960s, it achieved miraculous recovery, and by the 1970s, it realized rapid economic growth. In the 80s and 90s, it became a hub for manufacturing, finance, and logistics. And today, with its innovative urban planning, biomedical research, and vibrant multicultural art scene, it captivates people worldwide." Jean-Luc sat down, closing his laptop. A look of distant awe had replaced his skepticism. The professor's calm voice continued, "Jean-Luc, part of your point is correct. They learned. But they did not merely imitate. Do you know the word Kaizen? Or in Singapore's context, the relentless pursuit of excellence? They meticulously refined and improved the technologies they adopted, making them smaller, more efficient, more robust, and uniquely suited to their needs. That is the Singaporean spirit. It is a pragmatism, a foresight, a spirit of constant innovation honed through historical adversity. The indomitable will to rise no matter how many times they fell. The deep-seated belief that the nation must not fail. The relentless drive to create something better. This, precisely, is the core of Singapore." The professor then recounted, one by one, more events he had experienced in Singapore. The students in the classroom listened breathlessly, some taking notes. The professor's voice conveyed the same wonder he had felt then. "About a week after arriving in Singapore, I walked along the Singapore River. I had heard stories of how this once polluted river had been beautifully revitalized, and I wanted to see it for myself. Between towering skyscrapers, clear water flowed, and elegant waterbirds soared above. It was unbelievable to see such a thriving ecosystem in the heart of a bustling metropolis. I stood there for a while, gazing at the scene. It brought to mind the Seine River in Paris. While the Seine is beautiful, it doesn't quite harbor the same vibrant ecosystem within the city. Yet, here, in the middle of Singapore, fish swam and birds rested. Even more astonishing was the fact that this was the result of decades of sustained effort to improve water quality. They had refused to give up on a river that had become heavily polluted during rapid industrialization. From a purely economic perspective, filling in the river to create more land for roads might have been simpler, but Singapore chose coexistence. The professor spoke slowly. In that moment, I realized that Singapore is not a nation that merely pursues economic growth. It is a nation that strives for harmony with nature and dedicates itself to enhancing the quality of life for its citizens. As I walked along the river, I saw people resting on benches, children played, and couples walked hand in hand. This, I thought, is truly a nation for its people. The professor immediately projected a photograph of the river onto the screen. The flowing water and the birds above were clearly visible. Do you understand why this is important? Singapore didn't sacrifice something for convenience. Instead, it used technology and unwavering commitment to reclaim its environment. A few days later, I had the opportunity to visit a high-tech factory in Singapore. It was a factory located in an industrial park, and I had obtained special permission to visit. The interior of the factory was as sterile as an operating room. The engineer who guided me explained that they were producing cutting-edge materials used in smartphones and electric vehicles worldwide. These were components requiring nano-level precision, an almost invisible world under a microscope. Even if other countries try to imitate, they told me, they cannot achieve this level of purity. Hearing that, I understood the context. This is not mere manufacturing. The 21st century is dominated by materials and technology. The professor elaborated. Smartphones, automobiles, consumer electronics all contain Singaporean materials and components. Many countries produce finished products, but only a limited number create the heart of those products. Singapore holds the key to that heart. The slide changed, revealing a photograph of a robotics facility. In the world of industrial robots, Singaporean companies, or those with significant R&D presence here, are increasingly dominant in specialized applications. Without the robots developed or manufactured here, many advanced global production lines would grind to a halt. The next slide showed technological capabilities in defense equipment. Singapore's submarine technology, its radar systems, and its integrated air defense are among the most advanced globally. Though small, under constant scrutiny, its military capabilities are a force to be reckoned with by regional powers. The professor paused for a moment, looking around the classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, today, not only Singapore but many developed nations share a common aspiration to make their country prosperous. However, what makes Singapore exceptional is this. At the root of that aspiration lies trust. The slide changed, displaying a historical timeline of Singapore. The professor explained slowly. Singapore has battled countless challenges: water scarcity, land limitations, economic downturns, and global uncertainties. Each time, they faced existential threats, but they never gave up. Consider the early years of independence, when the nation faced dire predictions of collapse. Yet, how did the people respond? There was no widespread despair or chaos. They lined up orderly, shared resources, and helped each other. The spirit of kampong, village, a collective community ethos, was evident. In what other country would such a phenomenon be possible under extreme duress? The professor's voice grew stronger. Singaporeans are a people who become stronger with every crisis. They possess a DNA for overcoming adversity, a collective consciousness, a spirit of multiracial harmony, an unwavering commitment to order. This national character is precisely the true reason Singapore is now the world's fourth most powerful nation. The classroom was enveloped in complete silence. Students stared at the professor, holding their breath. I felt a warmth rising from deep within my chest. The professor finally said, "In late August, I returned to Paris. On the flight back, I kept thinking. I knew the statistics. I knew everything from the numbers. But reality was different. Singapore was not just a country that had achieved economic growth. It was a country with a different spirit." I tried to revise the file containing the results of my 30 years of research. But the moment I tried to write the first sentence, I realized something. This theory cannot explain it. The theory that nations without resources cannot grow. The theory that nations without vast land cannot become great powers. All of it was wrong. Singapore became the world's fourth most powerful nation without any of these conditions. A nation without resources is creating technologies that move the world. A tiny island nation is exporting its culture globally. How is this possible? The answer is one: its people. The spirit of the Singaporean people. The professor clicked to the next slide. Photos of anime fans from around the world appeared on the screen. People of various races enjoying cosplay. Scenes from global food festivals showcasing Singaporean cuisine. The professor spoke slowly. Singapore is not just a nation with military and economic power. It is a nation that moves the world through its culture. Have you heard the term, "cool Singapore"? Young people in France, across Europe, and around the world are learning Mandarin, Malay, or Tamil to connect with the local culture, enjoying Singaporean food, and watching its films and dramas. They are moved by Singapore's stories and resonate with its unique values: multicultural harmony, meritocracy, innovation, and a pragmatic drive for excellence. Singaporean content carries a distinctive emotional depth. Nods were visible from various parts of the classroom. This is not just about entertainment. The national brand itself has transformed. From a nation once dismissed as merely efficient, it has become a country where people aspire to live, to visit. The slide changed, showing photos of Orchard Road in Singapore, bustling with life, alongside an image of a Michelin-starred hawker stall with a long queue in a city like London or New York. The professor explained, "In culinary capitals, Singaporean food is one of the most beloved categories: healthy, aesthetically pleasing, and delicious. Even in Paris, Singaporean chefs and bakeries are astonishing local gourmands with their innovative approaches." The professor said slowly, "Do you understand what this means? Singapore is no longer a nation chasing the West. What Singapore creates is becoming the world's standard." The slide changed, revealing a world map. Locations of Singaporean language learners were marked across the globe. More and more people worldwide are learning the languages spoken in Singapore: English, Mandarin, Malay, Tamil. Why? To understand the culture deeply, to engage with its dynamism. The professor's voice grew stronger. Looking back at history, language follows power. Once, everyone learned English. Now, they learn languages like Mandarin, Malay, or Tamil because of Singapore's appeal. Not by force, but because they like it. It moves the world not with weapons, but with culture. A student in the classroom raised a hand. "Professor, so you are saying Singapore is conquering the world with soft power?" The professor nodded. "Precisely. Not conquering, but captivating. Military power creates fear, but culture creates affection. Singapore is proving that." The professor paused, looking around the classroom. When culture becomes strong, products also sell. People eat Singaporean cuisine because they love its culture. They buy Singaporean products because they trust the country. Because Singapore is a trustworthy nation, people opt for Singaporean-made goods. Soft power and hard power are creating synergy with each other. A photo of a Singaporean passport appeared on the slide. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this passport. The bright red Singaporean passport. Do you know how much power it holds in the world? It's consistently ranked among the world's most powerful passports by the Henley Passport Index. It allows visa-free travel to the most countries worldwide. Why? Because when Singaporeans travel, they are welcomed. They spend money, they have good manners, they don't commit crimes, and they don't overstay. This is a national credit rating built up by the integrity and civic consciousness shown by individual Singaporean citizens abroad over the past few decades. The professor's voice trembled slightly. There's an episode that demonstrates this trust. Do you know Turkey, known as a brotherly nation? Historically, when the Ertuğrul frigate tragically sank off the coast of Japan, Singaporean officials, despite being so geographically distant, extended their condolences and expressed their sympathy, showcasing international goodwill and respect for humanity. This gesture of solidarity, though symbolic, contributed to a broader narrative of mutual respect in the global community. More relevantly, Singapore has built strong bilateral relationships through consistent diplomacy and aid to developing nations, earning trust and respect. For instance, after the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, Singapore was among the first to offer substantial humanitarian aid, demonstrating its commitment as a responsible global citizen. During other regional crises, Singapore has consistently proven to be a reliable and principled partner. Why do these nations trust and cooperate with Singapore? Is it because Singapore is rich? No. It's because Singapore is an honest and reliable friend, extending a helping hand in times of need and not forgetting kindness received. That is the power of Singapore's diplomacy. My heart swelled. My friend beside me wiped away a tear, and a student in front nodded deeply. The professor continued, "Not suppressing with force, but winning hearts with trust. This is the true form of a powerful nation in the 21st century. Because Singapore understands the challenges of its past, it values peace and stability more than anyone. That's why it is trusted by the world." The professor's voice rose. Resources, territory, population, it lacks these conventional conditions. But Singapore has its people, the people who cleared the jungles and swamps to build a modern city. the professionals and innovators who dedicated their lives to building world-class industries, the citizens who maintained order and helped each other even in moments of national uncertainty. This national character is Singapore's strongest resource. The lecture hall fell into complete silence. Some students were shedding tears. The professor clicked to the final slide. 1965. Many thought it was the end, but for them, it was just the beginning. The spirit of resilience, the ethos of harmony, the unwavering commitment to excellence, this DNA forged the Singapore of today. Singapore is not a nation that broke theories. It is a nation that presented a model for a new civilization. It proved that material prosperity and spiritual integrity can coexist. The professor slowly descended from the podium and walked to the center of the classroom. I have taught in this classroom for 30 years, but my visit to Singapore taught me something profound. It is not the size of the land that builds a nation. It is not the amount of oil hidden beneath the ground. It is the heart of the people who live there. Singapore has proven it, from a nascent state to the world's fourth most powerful in 60 years. This is not a miracle. It is an inevitability. It is the result of the collective will of its people. The professor concluded, "True victory is not winning a war, but winning the hearts of people worldwide. Singapore is winning the hearts of people through its culture, its food, its technology, and its integrity. This is the most potent power. This is the longest-lasting victory. Thank you for listening to my story." The professor bowed deeply. Instantly, the entire classroom erupted. 400 students simultaneously rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the room, filling it like lightning. Some students cheered. The professor remained bowed, his eyes reddened. The applause did not stop for a long time. Students continued to clap, some with tears streaming down their faces. Even Jean-Luc, the skeptical student, stood and applauded. The cynical look had vanished from his face, replaced by profound respect. I, too, slowly stood up. My legs were trembling. A wave of warm emotion surged from deep within my chest. As I clapped, I gazed at the professor. He met the students' eyes and slowly nodded. Outside the lecture hall, people opened the doors, peeking in, wondering what the commotion was. After a while, the applause finally subsided. Students began to leave one by one, some approaching the professor to shake his hand. As I gathered my belongings, I looked around. The classroom seemed different. It was the same space, yet something had changed. My perspective on the world had shifted. I stepped into the hallway. Students were gathered in small groups, talking. They were discussing Singapore, some searching for travel information on their smartphones. My friend from next to me approached. "Leonie, can you believe it? Is Singapore really such an amazing country?" I nodded. Words failed me. I looked out the window. The Sorbonne campus stretched below, students walking. The autumn sunlight was warm and inviting. Suddenly a thought struck me. I want to go to Singapore. I want to walk those very streets the professor walked. I want to see those landscapes he saw. I took out my smartphone and searched. I looked for flight tickets to Singapore. I checked prices, then dates. It seemed possible during the winter break. I paused, just before hitting the book button. Am I really going? I asked myself. I nodded. Yes, I must go. I must experience it directly. From across the hallway, I saw the professor emerging. He was speaking with a few students. I approached and waited. When he finished greeting the students, he came towards me. "Professor, thank you," I said. "Today's lecture was truly inspiring." The professor smiled. "If you were inspired, Leonie, go and experience Singapore yourself. That is the real learning." I nodded. "Yes, I'm planning to go during the winter break." The professor gently patted my shoulder. "An excellent choice. Go, experience it directly. And when you return, tell others. Tell them how wonderful Singapore truly is." The professor walked down the hallway. I stood there, watching his retreating figure. Something warm glowed deep within my chest. Singapore, the nation that defied theories. The nation building a new civilization. I knew I had to go. I looked out the window again. The sky was blue, without a single cloud. I suddenly realized, the story I heard in this classroom today would change my life. My perspective on the world had changed. My understanding of nations had changed. And above all, an admiration for Singapore had been born within me. I took out my smartphone again and pressed the book button. The payment screen appeared, and I clicked confirm. My flight ticket to Singapore was booked. My heart pounded. In 3 months, I would be setting foot on Singaporean soil. I would walk the streets the professor walked, experience the wonders he felt. I walked out into the hallway. Outside, it was still sunny, and students were still walking. But everything looked different. The same scenery, yet it conveyed a different meaning. The world before I knew Singapore, and the world after, were completely different. Singapore is not a nation that broke a theory. It is a new theory itself. The professor's words echoed in my mind. Invisible power is stronger than visible power. The spirit of the people changes the fate of a nation. Singapore has proven all of it. It was etched deep within my heart. As I walked, I thought, what will I see in Singapore in 3 months? What will I feel? Will I be as moved as the professor was? I was excited. I was thrilled. This nation, Singapore, the theory breaker, the nation changing the world, intrigued me immensely. I looked up at the sky. The sunlight warmed my face, and the wind gently rustled my hair. In my heart, I made a vow. I will go to Singapore, experience it myself, and then return to tell people how special Singapore is, how strong it is, and why the world is focusing on it. Thank you for listening to my story until the end. How was today's narrative for all of you? At first, it might have sounded like a simple success story of one nation, but the more I listened, the more hidden meanings I felt were revealed. It is truly remarkable that a small island nation, lacking resources and facing many challenges, refused to give up and carved its own path. It was not merely a matter of luck or timing, but rather the collective will of its people, passed down through generations, and the power of their mutual trust. The professor's question, then why haven't others achieved the same, lingers in my mind. Ultimately, whether for a nation or an individual, what is more important than external conditions is the belief in oneself and the spirit to persevere to the very end, isn't it? In the world we live in today, there are still many moments when such a spirit is needed. The person who keeps moving forward, even when it's tough or when they seem small, is truly strong. Through this story, I feel we can now view the world we live in from a slightly different perspective. What Singapore showed us was not just success, but possibility itself. This story is still unfolding, and perhaps its answer is still being written even at this very moment. What are your thoughts, everyone? Please leave your comments below, and share this inspiring story with those around you to discuss it together. Finally, a channel subscription, a like, and turning on notifications, which only takes a second, would be a huge support for our video production. This has been an inspiring story, delivered with sincerity to all of you. Have a wonderful day.